Hey there everyone, and welcome to a new series I'm starting. In this series I'm going to go through all the skills and all the classes, talking about what these skills do and loads of other stuff, as well as builds and elemental, which skill runes to pick and which ones to level up, that kind of thing. A lot of useful information which I believe a lot of people want to know about. So here's going to, since this is the first video, I'm going to go through the format first and just tell you what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to go through the classes in turn, doing Wizard first, then Archer, then Knight. So if you come to this as it's being released and you want to see one for the other classes, just hold tight and the other videos will be coming. So for each class I'm going to be doing 8 videos. The first 6 I'm going to be going through 3 skills in each video, kind of what they do, what the skill runes add to the skills, and then as a result of the skill runes and the rest of the skills on the class, where you end up actually using these and what they're useful for. That is the skills I'm talking about. Then I'm going to talk about how many skill points to put into them and what kind of skill rune to pick that you'll find useful for playing. The 7th video I make is going to be an overview of the skill setups and builds. This is talking about which 10 skills you put on your class and where you're going to put them. And then also builds as in, what kind of combination of the skills. Oh yeah, how many points you're going to be putting in, depending on how many skill points you have in total. You can see I've got a ridiculous amount here. This is just my test account. And then the 8th video is going to be talking more about skill runes and elements. So it's going to talk about which elements are strongest on each class, on that class, and which ones are weaker. Which skill runes that you should be going for each skill and stuff, and a lot of useful information there. This is going to be a little bit more situational. It will change over time as new skill runes come out into the game. The previous 7 videos I'm going to be doing in a way that they shouldn't need updating over time, so you can refer to them and then use that knowledge to kind of apply to any new skill runes which come out. The 8th video is going to be talking about how it is kind of in current time with the current skill runes, and that's one which I may redo at later dates. So I hope that gives you an idea of the format of it. Also, these videos, while I'm going to go through each skill and go through all that stuff which I just explained, if you want to see the exact numbers on the skills, how much damage and cooldown and stuff they have over the levels, this is my guide on the forum here, called KD's Active and Advanced Skills Guide. So I go through each skill in turn. I talk a little bit about the skill, how many points to put into it, and I have a little table showing the different numbers. So if you want to have a look at this yourself, then do go check out this guide. But otherwise, I'm going to try and cover stuff in my videos. Sorry, I just won't go into all the numbers in detail because they're a bit heavy for some people. So anyway, let's get started with this video. I'm going to start by going through these different skills: Arcane Ball, Burst, and Arcane Beam. Arcane Ball, this is a little damage skill from range. Wizards are all about area of effect damage, and this does a little area of effect around where you hit. So it's pretty much your bog standard what you're going to get on this wizard class, and it's very useful in most cases. The thing is, this damage is actually not very high. So what you'll see is that skill runes add damage skills and also extra effects. And they also increase the range of it. So they basically buff it in all regards. And what you want is either one which increases, well, I'll get into it, sorry, in a second. I'll just show the skill. So the skill will hit a little area around the enemies. It's not that big until then you add skill runes. So as you can see, it hits, hits a few enemies, but it doesn't actually hit a huge area. Now if I switch to one like Empowered Fire Blast, this increases the range massively, and it makes it a brilliant skill for farming. This is probably your best skill for farming, other than teleport for just getting through the map. Because as you can see, if you hit that enemy there, you take out the whole group and stuff. It's brilliant for farming. It's great for making this skill useful in combat. So you can hit a group of enemies and do a bit of damage to them. But typically, you're not going to be doing loads of damage and killing enemies with this. And for that reason, I think the best way to use this skill is actually as a control skill. So Empowered Fire Blast does put a little slow on. But one like Empowered Frozen Sphere, this adds a 3-second slow. This slow is actually 75%. Now, bearing in mind the cooldown is only 2 seconds on the skill, slowing something down for 3 seconds means you can keep them slowed constantly, and 75% slow is no joke at all. You can control enemies. Now, here I'm going to be one-shotting the enemies, so you can't actually see the slow, But the idea is you can run around enemies in combat, hit them periodically with this to slow them, move a bit more, and then slow them again, move a bit more, slow them again. You can't actually reapply the slow until it's ended, but you can get used to that 3-second window and when it's going to crop up again. In PvP, I'm sure you can imagine for controlling knights movement, this is perfect because you can slow them down, move away, slow them down more. That's really where this skill gets very useful, and it's skill runes like these that I feel like are the best for this skill, simply because it's not that great for damage anyway. So getting more points in it, what this mostly does is gets more damage on it, and it increases the cooldown. By increasing the cooldown, you're going to make your farming a little bit slower, and like I say, the damage is not that important. However, seeing as the cooldown is so low anyway, only 2 seconds, you can argue that you could put some points in this and not get much of a downside. All you'll do is increase the damage. So for that reason, if you have spare points and you want to do this, you can put it up to like 30, 40, maybe 50, but I would recommend not taking anywhere beyond where the cooldown is 3 seconds, like more than 3 seconds, because you're not gonna be able to use it frequently enough for farming and for other stuff too. You want to be able to use this frequently. So that's that skill there, and I hope that gives you an idea of how to use it. Now the burst skill. So burst hits a little area around you, it hits those enemies. The damage on it is exactly the same as you have for Arcane Ball, 116%, which means you're not going to be seeing much damage from this at all. The main use of it is the stun effect. In PvP the stun effect's reduced as well, and it's actually quite hard to hit because it only hits a little area around you. So this skill, I'm a little bit biased against it. I don't like it that much, but anyway, what skill runes do for this is they increase the range, or they add some damage on, or some extra effect. That's a bit of a variety there, but basically they do various things with this skill to make it useful in some way, because it's not that useful otherwise. So I'll show you the skill first of all. As you can see, it only hits a little area, and it will stun them in that area quite nicely. But yeah, that's it there. So now we'll put a skill like Icicle Splash in. This increases the range, and you'll see it hits a much bigger area. This makes it really easy to hit in PvP, and it also makes it a bit more useful for hitting the enemies reliably and stunning them when you're using it elsewhere. So this particular skill rune also increases the stun to 3 seconds in PvP, which makes it a brilliant stun skill for PvP. So that's the kind of thing which you're looking at on this. There are other ones which increase the damage but not the range. So if you want to use it as a damage skill, say you want an extra fire skill for damage, or an extra nature skill for damage, or whatever, then you can use these kind of ones to increase the damage on it and make it useful for that. However, I would argue that you could get more damage benefit from other skills. This is more kind of a utility skill, similar to how Arcane Ball is better for slowing enemies and that kind of stuff. Burst is basically good for stunning enemies. So for that reason, you kind of want a low cooldown so you can use it as frequently as possible, and basically put those stuns on when you want to, rather than having to wait on the cooldown of this. I would really recommend putting it at a 10 out of 99. If you increase it further, the cooldown's going to increase. That damage just doesn't really matter. And 6 seconds to 12 seconds is a big increase. When it's only stunning for 3 seconds, you want to have it as frequent as possible. So now moving on to Arcane Beam. Now, while those last two skills are utility skills, this skill is a damage skill, and it is probably, well, it is the best original damage skill in the game. So it does these hits over 5 seconds. It does 6 hits of 105%. So if you compare that to the 116% on the last two skills, this one does 630%. The difference is it only does it to one enemy. So basically this is your kind of single target damage dealer. It is brilliant for boss takedowns, damage in PvP, everywhere. It's just useful everywhere except for farming, because farming you want to hit big areas. And so yes, this skill you will be using pretty much all the time as one of your best damage skills. And for that reason, almost all the skill runes, they basically just add damage, and you want to pick the one that's the correct element for you or for the content. Another thing which they do is change the fear to stun. So this also, as well, on top of the damage, it has a fear effect for 5 seconds. What fear does is it makes the enemy run away from you. Unfortunately you can't see because I'm one-shotting these enemies, but where you would use this in combat is, say you have this mob of enemies, come at you, a small group, well, a group of lots of small enemies, you know you can tank them, you can deal with them. However, there's one big enemy in them which you know you can't deal with. So what you can do is you can hit that one, the big enemy, and it will run away, and then it won't attack you for the next 5 seconds, and then you can deal with the other ones. That's where that comes into play, except fear doesn't work on loads of different things. So the skill runes, they change this into a stun effect for 5 seconds, and that's far more useful. It's not really going to work on bosses, but yeah, it's pretty good. And in PvP, just in general, the fear works as stun in PvP, so it doesn't matter what skill rune you have on this. Basically, it also has that extra effect of a 2-second stun on top of the fact that it does loads of damage. So in PvP, this is a brilliant skill, and otherwise, yeah, you mainly want to use this for the damage, not for the stun. So that is these 3 skills, and I don't think there's anything more I want to add. I hope it's pretty clear about what you're looking for in these skills. Oh, sorry, I was going to talk about skill points. I knew there was something. So skill points in this skill. So previous to, I would recommend 10 in them, maybe a bit more in Arcane Ball, if you want some damage on that without too much of a downside. In Arcane Beam, adding more skill points into this will increase the damage. It also increases the cooldown from 7 to 14 seconds, which is quite annoying but not too bad. It's not that slow. Now, where you would make the decision here is dependent on your elemental stats. So if you've got below 200% in the element which you're using as a skill rune on this, then it's likely that increasing the skill points in here will massively increase the damage you do and make it worth it. I say that because increasing the skill points doesn't increase the elemental damage. So if you have high elemental stats, actually the majority of the damage is coming from the skill rune, and increasing the skill points in it will just lower your increase the cooldown, which lowers your overall damage per second from this skill. Now the thing is, since this is such an important damage skill on the class, I would argue that you really need that damage per second from it. If you start lowering the damage per second, then you're going to be lowering your damage output overall. So you need to optimize for that, and for that reason I would say if you're above 200% on an element, then definitely have it at 10 out of 99. But if you're below that amount, then you should consider you could consider putting it higher and getting lots of damage per skill use and just increasing the cooldown on it. So that's what I'd recommend for this one. It's certainly it's one of the ones which you could get up higher, but you can still work with it at 10 out of 99. What I would recommend to anyone, if you're unsure about this, try it at 10 out of 99, see what the damage output is like, and then if you want to get a bit more damage out of it, try pushing it up a little bit and seeing if the cooldown increase is annoying you, like, you know, if it feels better or worse, and then yeah, try and find that right amount for you, whatever feels right. Personally, I like the low cooldown, so I'd always pick 10 out of 99, but I'm slightly biased because I've always had high elemental stats. So do what you like with this, but that's my recommendations, and I hope that makes it clear enough. So that's these 3 skills. I hope I've gone through everything which you may have as a question, and you have a good idea of how they're used now. I will go through the next 3 skills in the next video, so I'll see you then.